month. All right. We'll call our meeting to order, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Stratton. So good to see you, Karen.
Happy Monday, everybody. I hope you all had a good week off, council members. Let's go ahead and get started. There's one change in the agenda. We're going to take off the streets update with Clint Harris, and he is going to hopefully present that at the next PIES meeting. We'll be working with Hannah Lee to see if we can make that happen, Brian. Does anybody have anything? Oh, let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Those were sent out this morning. Has everybody had a chance to read them and look at them?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes passed. Looking at the consent agenda, are there any items that anyone would like pulled off for discussion?
Councilman, I was going to ask to pull off the unpaved streets.
Paving unpaved streets, okay. Do we have Kyle Tuig? Was he on here? Kyle, is that something that you could answer some questions on?
Dan and I are both on, so we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Perfect, go ahead. Councilmember Cathcart, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Really, I was just hoping for a quick overview of the area that's going to be paved, the cost, and kind of what the process was for determining that particular project.
Sure. Dan, do you want to pop right in and handle those details?
Sure. So we've got two streets. One was in the south. One was in one of the northern council districts, the other northeast, and the northwest, I believe, was not included because there was a street that was done, an unpaved street that was paved here within the last year or so, and I think that counted as that district's street. I believe the streets were selected from a list of 5 or 10 that were submitted by the council members as the priorities from each district. And a year or two ago, we presented this to council as there was a couple of different ways. There were hard streets, basically, and there were simple streets to do. The simple streets, of course, we could get more blocks done for the same amount of money than the hard streets. The hard streets being those that were on a hillside, those that had a bunch of rock, those that had a ton of trees right up next to them. And so it was decided at that time that we would do the simple streets to make the money go further. And so from the list of 5 or 6 or 7 streets that council members provided, we picked the one that we felt like we could get the farthest with the money available, and which is, like 3 blocks per district. Let's see, did that answer all the questions? Were there other questions?
Just follow up. So there's a project I've really pushed to try and get done, and so far haven't been able to be successful on, and that's Sitka. It's a very short piece of road up there, but my question is, and I'm going to continue to keep bringing it up because I think it's important to get it done for those folks, how much does air quality play into the decisions of where we're going to pave these unpaved roads? Because that's a serious issue for the residents around that particular area on Sitka, is really poor air quality because of the dirt road and the fact that we have our garbage trucks that run over it constantly and pull up dust and just plague those neighbors.
Do you want me to pop in?
Sure.
It's absolutely a consideration. I mean, we had the funding to pick one street out of this, so we just literally went through the first council recommendation, the second, and the third, and looked for the opportunities. So I don't remember where Sitka was on that list. I'd have to go back and talk to Catherine about where that was. But we have a laundry list of unpaved streets to get to, and as long as there was no physical barrier that would have disproportionately added cost, I would assume it would be very high up on the list for our next ones to hit. But we did not do one block. We tried to find 2 or 3 so that we could save on that mobilization. These are just single projects. I think they're each a couple blocks long or so.
Yeah, and I'm not, by no means by complaining about this project. I mean, I'm glad Northeast is getting a little bit more love and we're getting some stuff done. But yeah, I just continue to bring that up. Just air quality is a huge concern for those folks around Sitka, and so just want to keep making sure that's part of the discussion.
Yeah, certainly. And if we're able to keep moving forward with this program, we'll keep refreshing that list as we either A, complete candidates, or B, if we need to move some down because of cost, then it also gives you guys the opportunity to provide us some feedback of what ones are rising up for various reasons.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Kyle.
I do have a question, but I will see if anybody else has questions. Okay. Council President, did you have a question?
This one's.
You have to unmute yourself.
Yep. Hannah Lee is my unmuter. So, yeah, I just wanted to note that that prioritization that we did by district, that occurred a year ago. So Councilmembers Fagan and Burke came up with the priorities. And if we're able to keep this program going, then Councilmember Cathcart, you and Councilmember Burke could work on the priority for the next projects. Essentially, we're hopeful that we'll be able to do something in each district going forward. It depends on the Initiative 976 decision and things like that. But Streets was planning it based on prioritizations with different council members than currently exist. So just wanted to note that.
Well, and I also wanted to say that Sitka was on our list, so like we already had it on there. But so I just wanted to mention that to Councilmember Cathcart. We've been working with that gentleman on that street for a couple of years now. So.
And just one other thing that this is our first run through this project. We were a little worried that these smaller projects just were the costs going to come in where we were estimating, and I'm very happy to report that we are. So we are getting bids that are competitive despite the smaller size of the project. So I think that bodes well for what we were planning forward for financially moving forward.
I want to add one thing to what Kyle said. What Kyle alluded to is it had some potential similarities to the traffic calming projects where we continually get bids that are higher than we feel like they should be, what we expect, and that's directly related to there's so much work scattered in so many different areas of town. And so when Kyle said here a minute ago that, if the budget handled 2 or 3 blocks per council district, we really wanted to pick the 2 or 3 blocks to be, 3 blocks right in a row, because so we didn't repeat the what we find on traffic calming where they just charge us through the arm and a leg to go scattered all over the place.
And then I will just end the discussion with a question. I just wanted to clarify. So for the Northwest projects, the project that you're talking about was Falls Avenue. That was the
correct, Karen.
one. And so what we're hoping then is in this next round, if we do have funding, Northwest would have an opportunity to participate again and put some growth up for consideration, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions on consent? Okay, we're going to move right down into staff reports. I'm going to turn it over to Garrett Jones. We've had some good discussions with Garrett regarding fall planning and some really interesting partnerships that he is in the process of working on. So, Kyle, take it away. Take it away.
That's all right, Karen. Yeah, good morning, Council President and Council. And we wanted to give you an update today. We focused a lot on the operations end of Parks and Recreation, so I brought a special guest with me today, Jennifer Papich. She is our Recreation Director. And so today is more of an update on how we've shifted throughout the COVID crisis from a recreational standpoint and being able to have those touch points with our community and children and our youth, and then also where we're headed with, a lot of the schools taking the distance learning approach, and how are we going to be able to touch kids and support our different partners throughout the fall as well. So got a little presentation for you. I'm going to just hand it over to Jennifer Papich, our Director of Recreation.
Hi, Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Pavich. Thank you for having me here today. I'm going to try and share my screen here. Well, do you guys see, everybody see that? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so basically this first slide here is just talking about how recreation has evolved and adapted during COVID. So during mid-March is when things really started to rapidly happen, and we started to have to postpone or cancel our spring programs. And things were happening at such a rapid pace in March that we were constantly, all of our recreation supervisors, constantly in contact with our participants in the community, letting them know and keeping them up to speed on what was going on to make sure that they were engaged, that we were continuing to engage them and that they didn't have any questions, and we were just staying in real close contact. By the end of March, all of our temp seasonal staff had been put on standby for recreation. And we also started to communicate with those staff as well, because at that point we weren't really sure when things were going to be back up and running. So we wanted to really stay in close contact with those staff that were on standby, that were laid off. So they were ready to join the workforce again if and when that was possible. And obviously, all the way that we're normally used to doing recreation dramatically changed. So we had to get really creative and pivot and try to figure out how to still engage with our community and our participants. Something that was super helpful that we did was through Washington Recreation and Park Association, we started all of the recreation staff virtual discussions, statewide, nationally, about sharing resources, collaborating, who had great ideas. We were all navigating this unfamiliar territory, so we all kind of were brainstorming together, which was extremely, extremely helpful. One of the first things that came out of that was our social media boredom busters. And we had a great time with this. Our staff it was a great morale booster, actually, because we all got to learn new things. We had to become experts on videos. So we all had to learn how to create videos on our phones, edit them, and post them online, and how to even, hang them appropriately so you could video yourself. But we had a great time doing it. And as you can see, the public did as well. We had 1 week over 90,000 views, 3,000 minutes of content was viewed. So people were really responding great to these. We would have competitions of who could get the most likes on their posts that they did. But it was great because we had everything from cooking, science, art, camping, pickleball in your garage, all sorts of different things. And we would research what other cities and municipalities were doing across the nation and capitalize on that as well to get our ideas. So this was something that was really great for our staff to do, took our mind off of the stress of the pandemic and helped us engage with our folks. As time went on and as the Department of Health started to really develop and hone in on some modifications so we could be able to do some programming, we started to develop our midsummer activity guide. And this was all electronic. And so we worked strictly within those parameters, worked really closely with the health district to get approval, worked really closely with Stephanie Crawford and RISC. She approved everything, was looking at everything, gave us insight. And we knew that this had to be kind of a comprehensive package when we released it electronically. So it was on a website landing page that our marketing and communications team helped put together. So we had a video from Cable 5 showing parents and kiddos what to expect when they were returning to camp, how that check-in, check-out procedure would look like, what those modifications of sanitation, social distancing, and mask wearing look like. So it would kind of ease that stress and uncertainty. We had a frequently asked questions page, we still do, on there. We had a comprehensive list of what we were doing as far as the sanitation and social distancing to keep participants safe. We also really enhanced our staff training. We had some minimal 10 seasonal staff that we had to bring on board to help with these programs. And we, added COVID and sanitation, social distancing training to those training situations so our staff was prepared as well. And they were also, nervous also coming back into the camp situation. So it was very nice to have these clear regulations and protocols in place, kind of put everybody at ease for participating. Also, we wanted to be pretty budget conscious with this. So with all of our programs that are in our Midsummer Activity Guide, they're either fully or partially staffed by our recreation supervisors with some minimal temp seasonal staff, and we're also utilizing the Next Gen Zone staff, which is free of charge to us as well, so that's an added benefit. You can see the marketing areas that, since this was electronic, we couldn't mail this out, but we got this information out through Peach Jar, through the school district, traditional media picked it up, obviously through social media, and we sent it out to our civic registration customers with Parks and Rec and the Burning Letters as well. And this is just a deeper dive into some of the programs that we are currently offering in summer. So this first one here is at Dwight Merkle Sports Complex. It's our summer day camp. It's all outside. You can see from the photos that everybody's wearing their masks, practicing social distancing. This camp is great. We've served 48 children so far in the first 4 weeks of camp. We have a couple more weeks to go. They get to utilize the BMX track. Each camp week has a different theme. They get to use the skate park, a lot of outdoor exercise, which is really great. Staff has to check their temperature daily. All the kiddos, when they're dropped off and are asked a series of health questions, to make sure, have you checked your child's temperature? Have they been exposed to anybody with symptoms? There's a whole list of questions that they're asked every day. Hand sanitizing and, all sorts of things are built into the schedule to help keep our kiddos and staff safe. And under the phase 2 protocols, there is no more than 22 people allowed in total attendance. So that's campers and staff combined. My kid was one of those that attended this camp, and I can just say it was amazing. Like just having them be outside and socialize, even though with the modifications, it was just you just noticed, the happiness and, getting to do something that had some type of normalcy it meant a lot. And we hear that a lot with a lot of the other parents as well. They're just really thankful that there's something for their kids to do, and it gives them a little break as well. We also have camps at the Corbin Art Center that are going. We have school-age camps that are full day, and then half-day camps for preschoolers. And you can see in these pictures here as well, everybody's wearing their masks. Each area is taped off with each specific camper. They have their own caddy of supplies that are specifically theirs for the entire week. So those are their supplies and nobody else touches them. There's no sharing of materials. Everything is sanitized and cleaned daily, multiple times during the day. And then they have to do the same things as well as the Corbin Art or Merkle Camp with this health screening questions at check-in and check-out as well. And we've been able to serve 95 children in the first 4 weeks at the Corbin Camp, and their 2 weeks after they did the media story, the last 2 weeks filled up to capacity. So it just really demonstrates that there is a desire and need for these programs. So with our therapeutic recreation services, we were able to offer some outdoor outreach modified. With the therapeutic recreation, participants sometimes mask wearing is a bit of a struggle for that population, and so we wanted to do programs that limited the need for those through social distancing. And you're able to do that through biking, walking, and hiking. They need to wear their masks during the check-in and when we're giving instructions, but then when they're out on the trails, able to have social distance, they don't have to wear their masks. And we just have received such a great feedback from their guardians, from themselves, just at how elated they are to be out doing things. It's just really done great things for their mental and physical health. Then our outdoor adventures is the last thing that we're offering during this Midsummer Activity Guide season. And since July 25th, we've been able to provide adventures to 19 participants, and that number keeps growing. With the same thing kind of with the therapeutic recreation services, when you're doing things outside, you're able to social distance, mask wearing isn't a requirement. So it's paddleboarding, kayaking, canoeing, and hiking. After the initial check-in and instructions are given, when people are on their canoes or kayaks or paddleboards, they can take their masks off. We're also promoting family paddleboarding trips, private trips, or private lessons. So as a family unit, you can get together and participate in that. So we're doing those as well. And Ryan Griffith, who is our Assistant Recreation Director and Outdoor Recreation, supervisor is leading all of these trips with the minimal temp seasonal staff. So that's helping down costs. And then as we're looking to fall, we're looking, the same model, deciding on if we're still going to be in phase 2. We're just brainstorming right now. So these ideas right here are just all things that we've kind of been hearing other people doing in other municipalities, things that we feel that will be needs for our customers, especially with school starting online. That childcare support is going to be really critical. So we're going to be continuing to work with our community centers and with the schools to see how we can help them and fill those gaps. Looking at after-school art programs, family craft programs, virtual programs. We did a survey with our therapeutic recreation community to see what they would be interested and comfortable with doing and what their needs are. And this week, we're going to be sending out a more broad survey to the general public to also ask them the same questions, what they would be interested in doing, what they need, what their needs are, and their level. So be looking for the electronic fall activity guide to be out shortly after Labor Day. And with that, that is the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Figure out how to stop sharing this. There we go.
Does anybody have any questions? Jennifer, this is exciting. Thank you, Parks, for all of this hard work. Oh, Councilman Cathcart.
I actually have a question for Garrett. Slightly an aside from this, I'm just wondering what kind of work's being done right now in terms of long-term planning for parks. Obviously, not a lot can be done right now with budget constraints, but is there some long-term planning that's going on right now for investments in parks and upgrades and things like that?
Yeah, great question, council member. We were right when COVID hit, we were right at the beginning of launching our Parks and Open Space Plan update. It really gives us the next 10 years or decade of what type of investments, what are the community's needs, what are the wants, what are the gaps. And so we'll be relaunching that program here this fall, and then have an adoption and then with the park board and then endorsement with the city council to give us that next big push of what the citizens want. As far as investment, neighborhood parks is, I think, going to be the primary focus moving forward. We have not truly had a large investment in neighborhood parks since 1999. That's quite a long time, and that only touched half of the neighborhood parks. So we were able to. So we still have a lot of old playground structures that are wood. I mean, they're great, they're nice, but they're old. That's even pre-1999. So, we've been able to hit on our sports complexes, our aquatic centers, our crown jewel of Riverfront Park. And now I think it's going to bring, how can we improve accessibility, play, safety into our neighborhood parks moving forward? And I think that's where a lot of that focus is going to be for our next master plan. And you see in our recreation program, I mean, the community they're itching to get to do something and to do something safely. So we're going to continue. Jen's team is so creative. You look across the board, so many recreation programs just called it quits. They just said, you know what, it's too hard to do something. And we have one of the most creative teams in the entire nation. And to move forward, I think it's going to even show even more when kids are going to need after-school programs. And we want to kind of tap into that energy too, because our capacity in our parks have gone up almost 80%, people using our facilities, our recreation programs. And so I think this is a good time, even budget's a little tight, to relaunch the master plan, get people involved to what that next 6 to 10 years looks like.
I think we passed some information along to you about some concerns in Minnehaha Park regarding the decrepit state of the play equipment and some bee infestations and things like that. And so, yeah.
That's one of the pre-1999 play structures, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's what we're dealing with. But I think it's exciting as well, because we have over 60 neighborhood parks, and we can really have a personal touch. There's a neighborhood park just about a walking distance, a quarter mile to everyone's home. and to have that involvement moving forward is going to be pretty awesome.
Great. Well, I look forward to that. Thanks, Karen.
Stuart, is there anything else you want to add to this presentation?
Nope, Jen did an awesome job. You know, I would say we have a great, strong relationship with District 81 and our school district. So we're going to continue to work with our great partner there to see how we can leverage and help each other out during these uncertain times once school starts in the fall of working together, whether it's the Express program or others. So continue to look at updates on how we're going to involve and work with our other partners. So.
And we'll make sure we get those updates scheduled in these meetings so you can keep people informed. On behalf of the Audubon Downriver neighborhood, it is fabulous to see sprinklers in Audubon Park. I have people stopping me all the time wanting to say thank you for getting some water on the park. It's making people feel much, much better, so thank you.
You're welcome. It looks a little better.
It looks better, yes. All the poodles running around like it. Trust me. Okay, Colin, I'm going to turn it over to you. You have 2 items. You're going to do a quick scooter update, and you're going to talk about the South University District Trail Feasibility Study. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning. Thanks for having me. So with scooters, just a quick update on the Lime program. And we put some restrictions in place 3 weeks ago, reducing the number to 500 scooters, putting limitations around Riverfront Park to reduce recreational use, and then also changing how scooters are grouped when they're parked. So generally more spacing between the scooters when they're parked in a group, and limiting the number in a group to 5 scooters. And that was put in place as kind of a trial to see if it helps. And we also put up some signs. I'll share those. And we're continuing to put these up more and more around places like our bike corrals that you see here in this photo. We have the dismount zone signs, and then we have some precautionary signs about, wear a mask, wear gloves, ride at least 6 feet apart, use only for essential travel. So these are some measures to kind of address the rising case counts. And then right now we're at the point where we're evaluating how these are going. So we should have some more conversations around that coming up, and want to keep council as involved in that as possible, and then decide how we move forward in the next few weeks. And the season ends November 15th, so we have a few months left, and the intention is to kind of keep everything else the same under the current contract rather than trying to change the contract at this point in the season. Our current contract with Lime ends after this season, but we have the option to renew for another 2 years. And so that would be a good opportunity this winter to reevaluate the contract and fees and how everything's set up. So are there any specific questions I can address?
Does anybody have any questions for Colin on the scooters? We just wanted to make sure I've seen them downtown, I've seen the spacing, I've seen the signs, and I just want to make sure everybody's aware of what some of the changes that are happening. Okay, so let's go ahead to your feasibility study.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this feasibility study for the South University District Trail has been ongoing for about the past year. And I'll switch to that. And we have results now to share with you. We wanted to give you a status update and seek any feedback at this point. It's a good point to check in as we wrap up the study. The contract is open with the consultant till the end of the year. So if there are any additional items to address, we wanted to figure that out now so we could address them before the contract ends. So real quick, I'll go over the goals, a little bit of background on the study, what the options we considered were, and what the selected alignment and design is, and then some of the issues we need to consider in potentially moving forward with this. So the goals of this were to provide a safe and comfortable option for walking and bicycling through the South U District, supporting the University District Gateway Bridge as a community connection, and then also providing convenient access for tenants, for students, for businesses to the University District. So really taking advantage of the U District Gateway Bridge and connecting it, and also connecting it to nearby trails like the Ben Burr Trail on Erie Street, and linking people over towards the Sprague Union Business District to the east. In this map, you can see the proposed alignment, linking the U District Gateway Bridge on the left, kind of that circular line across the railroad tracks. And then this highlighted alignment has been in the city's pedestrian and bicycle master plan since 2015. It was part of a series of amendments to the plan in 2015, recognizing the need to connect the Ben Burr Trail and the U District Gateway Bridge. And with the redevelopment of Sprague Avenue parallel to this, this kind of rose to the surface as a priority to start addressing that alignment and figure out what it would really take. In this screen, you can also see where the property lines are in teal. And you'll notice that it does go across, it's all on private property. So it goes across the Catalyst site, and then it goes on to BNSF land. And where it goes on to BNSF land, parallel to the railroad tracks in the middle of the screen, there are leases that cover that too. So the businesses to the south, each of those businesses to the south has a lease that covers that. And then to the far east end, this is a City of Spokane wastewater building, and the city recently purchased that lease back from BNSF. So that makes that little section a little more straightforward. And just looking at the site real quick, you can see the wastewater building towards the top of the screen by Hamilton. And so the proposed trail alignment goes right along the edge of this bluff going east. And then looking the other way. And then looking west, you can see the U District Bridge at the top of the screen, and it would also go by the Catalyst building. Between the Catalyst building, you can see there under construction, and the railroad tracks is where the proposed alignment is shown. And recognizing some of the challenges with going between that pinch point there, we did look at a few different options, and so the consultant put this range of options together. So option 1 versus option 2 on the west end. 1 goes along the bluff. Option 2 uses the access road for the Catalyst site and then veers back to the bluff. And then on the east end, we have 4 options, using Sprague in different ways, using the wastewater property in different ways, or going straight down under Hamilton, down that bluff there. You can see the topo lines get pretty close together, but just that's option A, going straight down to Erie Street, down that bluff. And so they evaluated all these options in terms of, geotechnical, topographic, and primarily a big factor in this was feedback from the private property owners on what they preferred, because it is all private property for the most part, except for the wastewater building. What did they really prefer? So particularly the Catalyst building, what did they see as the best option? And they preferred option 1, keeping it along the bluff rather than routing trail users along their access road and through their parking lots, which makes sense to avoid those conflicts. And right now it's kind of a landscaped pathway where option 1 is shown in purple, and they're open to the option of eventually turning that into a paved pathway if all the other pieces further to the east line up. So this shows the selected route. So option 1 and then option B. And the reason option B was selected at the east end, option A, the topographic challenges proved too challenging. Costs escalated rapidly due to the retaining walls and slopes and switchbacks and property acquisition that would be required to get down that slope. So option A was ruled out pretty quickly. And options B and C at 811 East Sprague, so the building just to the west of options, C and D, the private property owners weren't too keen on the idea of sharing that service alley with the trail. And there's a pretty narrow gap there, and right now school buses for Pride Prep are using that alleyway, and it would be really challenging to share that. And so another reason option B rose to the surface is because that's all city-owned property, so it would be, right now the city has a lot of decision-making power over how that property gets used, and using some of that property to accommodate the trail made sense. And so some more detail on the recommended alignment. You can see the Catalyst site, kind of where it's under construction, and this shows the U-District Gateway Bridge to the left there. You can see the little curve where it winds down towards Sherman Street. And you can see the pinch point there between the Catalyst building and the bluff. So it is a tight spot that would narrow the trail down to about 8 feet, but that is still in line with design guidance, national design guidance. 8 feet is possible in pinch points. And then it would continue following the bluff. And you can see this is a planned parking lot for the Catalyst site. So this is parking lot C, and it would go through that parking lot. So how that is done was addressed in more detail in the design, but it would have to interact with this parking lot, which has already been approved. And then also interact with this retention swale on both sides of this parking lot. So that's another design challenge. And then here you get to these two properties, 711 East Sprague, 815 East Sprague, and you can see their least limit just to the north of the proposed trail alignment, right on the edge of the bluff. So between the line to the south, which is the BNSF property line, and the line to the north of the trail, which is the leased land limit, this trail would be on land that is currently leased from BNSF by these private property owners, and they use that land for parking, and they value this parking, and so it's a big ask to ask for this portion of their parking lots for this trail, because there are lots of plans and ideas for how this property could be used in the future. So getting into the design, we did find that this alignment was feasible technically. It could be built given the geotech and the topography, and everyone was willing to consider possibilities for the trail, and they said, okay, let's see what the exact parking impacts are and how this could actually be done. So we did move forward into a conceptual design just to explore all those impacts. And you can see the parking lot layouts in this, where they actually developed some of the parking lot layouts. They could evaluate the specific numbers of parking and how it would be affected. And so you can see the trail does make it past the Catalyst building, and then through this parking lot, it would be a service road and then a parking lot, and be painted to really designate that trail space through the drive aisle, and then connect off again to a off-street shared use path, and using a portion of that land, of that private property. Moving further east, sorry, jumped a screen there. Moving further east, you can see it going through the rest of that parking lot between 811 East Sprague, and then down to the wastewater building site. It would wrap around the city's land to connect up to Sprague. And then once you get to Sprague, we still need to meet the challenge of connecting down to the Ben Burr Trail, which was a requirement of this study, is to connect this trail to the Ben Burr Trail. And so the proposal to address this big grade here would be to carry the trail up onto Sprague. There's a lot of space on this viaduct here. There's like a 18-foot wide two-way center turn lane and wide travel lanes. So it wouldn't affect the number of travel lanes at all, but we'd be able to narrow things up just a little bit to create space for an on-street trail across the viaduct, and no one's using that center turn lane across the viaduct. And so there's a little bit of space there. And we'd continue carrying the trail along Sprague until you get to a point where you can move the trail down one of these side streets to connect to the Ben Burr Trail. So you can see where the trail alignment essentially ends and where Ben Burr Trail goes underneath. And the consultant developed this range of options looking at grade and using the street network for how we would direct people up to that trail, given the various grades on the local street network and depending on where you go. So it'd be this kind of wayfinding network through the local streets to connect people from the South U District Trail to the Ben Burr Trail. So there are a few challenges, and we have those listed out, and we can get into those details if you want more details. but one of the major challenges is that the trail, as planned, is currently located almost entirely on private property, with the exception of that city site. And it also requires extensive negotiation with BNSF. So, what this would require is canceling 2 existing lease agreements for the private properties at 715 East Sprague and 811 East Sprague, and renegotiating those lease agreements to make space for the trail. And then once those are negotiated to free up that space from BNSF, from those 2 properties, we would need to enter into an agreement with BNSF to lease or purchase the trail alignment. And BNSF has indicated that they're open to a lease option, but the question is still open whether they'd be open to a purchase option. They haven't been clear on that. So the lease option would be a pretty non-standard approach to acquiring public right-of-way, to pay an annual fee for 20, 30, 50 years indefinitely is not a usual way we would go about creating a trail. And so we would look to purchase. And then we would also need to acquire an easement or purchase of the trail alignment from the Catalyst building, and they've indicated that an easement would be the most likely way to go. And then each of those properties, the Catalyst building, and then 715 East Sprague and 811 East Sprague, would want any lost parking stalls to be compensated in some way. So through parking off-site. And so they would want either, across the street on the CSO tank along Sprague or at the wastewater building site, that any parking spots they lose, they want those to be offset by providing them with parking on one of those sites. And so essentially the point we're at now is it's technically feasible, but the real challenge is acquiring the right-of-way and all the real estate negotiations that would kind of need to puzzle together to make this work. And depending on which negotiation approach ended up working, the cost ranges very widely. The trail itself, construction-wise, is pretty standard trail construction costs, but the X factor is this property cost. And so with that, I'd like to answer any questions and look for feedback and thoughts on this, and leave it open for discussion.
Does anybody have questions? I guess I have one question. So if we get through this, we've got the studies done, and if we get through this and those private property owners are reluctant to participate and to make the necessary agreements needed for this, then it doesn't happen? Is that, if we don't get the partners who are approving it, do we have a plan B if all of them?
Right. Yeah, we don't really have an eminent domain as an option on this. That wouldn't really be a way to go. It would depend entirely on partnerships with these property owners. And so the only other option would be to explore other parallel routes through the district, whether an on-street route through the district would probably be the most likely parallel option.
And are there good ways to, let's say this all goes through, are there good ways to, that I worry about safety in the parking lot, talking about a parking lot and then putting trailers, but I'm assuming that there are all sorts of methods to make sure that that's safe for people using that trail and mixing with parking, people driving cars.
Yeah, the consultant developed a few pretty low-cost options for doing that, and then a couple higher-cost options. So the low-cost options are different types of fencing and grade separation with curbs, and the higher-cost options are things like lighting and landscaping and making it kind of more of a public space that really draws people in through the district and making it kind of a destination with a lot of lighting and other treatments.
Okay, anybody else have questions? Councilman Member Cathcart?
Yeah, just curious, what has been the general response from those property owners to date?
We worked with them throughout the process, and they've always, throughout the process, been great partners and great to work with. But parking really is the issue. They see a lot of potential in these sites, and all of them depend on having meeting those parking requirements. So that's the issue. And then there's just the complexity of negotiating leases with BNSF, which is just can be a really long, drawn-out process, and is not always clear how it's going to end.
Well, yeah, parking is obviously a big concern in that area there, and I know there's some work being done to try and resolve that and maybe build a parking garage or so, and so hopefully we can get that sorted out.
Yeah, good question.
Council President, do you have a question?
Yes. Colin, I'm wondering if you could go back to the slide going east from the Ben Burr connection and just kind of maybe call out some of the streets. Maybe you had one where you had yeah. If you could just orient us to a little bit of what that looks like.
Yeah, I can pull up a cursor. So I'll just describe it. The orange line is kind of the northbound route from the Ben Burr Trail. So if you're heading north on the Ben Burr Trail underneath I-90, you take this orange route up Perry Street to Sprague Ave and continue on a separated pathway along Sprague Ave. And that's the lowest grade, so it's a nice gradual climb up to Sprague.
Okay.
And then you connect to the trail. And then if you're heading south from the South U District Trail, you would veer off at Ivory because you're heading downhill, and then you could connect to the Ben Burr Trail at the intersection of Ivory and Pacific. So that's a pretty direct connection down to the Ben Burr Trail.
Okay.
And then if you're heading north from the South U District Trail is the other blue line pointing north. You just head straight down First Ave to Erie Street where the trail connects. And then another option is if you're heading south on the Ben Burr Trail, this is the red line. You're heading south on the Ben Burr Trail from points north. You could connect to Pacific Ave and then circle around up Perry Street to get that really kind of gradual route back up to Sprague Ave. And that's kind of the longest route, but it's a nice gradual street. And First Avenue is identified in our bike plan as a bike-friendly route, and has shared lane markings on it now as a route parallel to Sprague. And I think there's interest. We've heard interest from the neighborhood about kind of upgrading that First Ave and Pacific route through this neighborhood as well, and this alignment would support that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yep. Just needed a little more time to absorb it.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of different options for connecting the two.
Any other questions from council members? Colin, is this something you could send to us?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Be nice to go over that again.
All right.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks. Next on the agenda, really quickly, I just wanted to give an update. Councilmember Kinnear has been working very, very hard on the pilot project for the 20-mile-an-hour around parks. We had a conversation, Councilmember Mumm and myself had a conversation with legal regarding Audubon Park. Audubon Park was put on that list, and Councilmember Mumm, jump in, welcome. Jump in when you need to. Audubon Park, there is a conflict with the Audubon Park section of Northwest Boulevard in that it is already a designated school zone, and we have the radar traffic cameras on Northwest Boulevard. We did talk to the Audubon Downriver Neighborhood Council president asking, do they want to keep that a school zone with that speed camera, or do they want to be part of the 20-mile-an-hour pilot project for the park? And they've chosen to stay with the school zone designation with the speed radar in place. So that leaves, we've requested now that Audubon is out, as far as the Northwest Parks, that maybe we consider Corbin Park to, there's been some issues around speeding around Corbin Park as well. So we're working on that, but I think that was the only park, Councilmember Kinnear, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was the only park where we've had this kind of issue where there's a conflict with school zone versus park zone. Am I correct?
You're correct. And I would also add that the 20 miles an hour for Audubon, for example, we were trying to get 20 miles an hour around the entire park. So when you think about most residential streets are 25, if you look at a park like Comstock, it's 20. If you look at Manitou, it's got 3 different speeds around Manitou. There's no consistency. So what we were trying to do with this resolution, make it consistent. So we've identified these parks for the pilot, all the way around needs to be 20 miles an hour. It's confusing for drivers to have to go from 20 to 25, or in the case of Manitou, Bernardo's 30. Nobody does 30. Most of the people do 35 to 40. So we're trying to get some consistency. So that's a consideration.
Councilmember Cathcart?
I would just wonder if maybe at Public Safety or next month at Urban Experience, maybe we can just take some other updates on some of the other pilot, where this is being piloted around town. I know the only place I've heard concerns, and a lot of it is High Drive, and so certainly I would love to hear some feedback there, but it's not my district, so but I would love to hear some feedback as to how it's going, and
We'll go ahead and talk to Lori and others to see if we can get that on the next meeting.
that'd be great.
Councilmember Ron, you want to add anything?
Well, it was really a tough decision because, you know, we needed 20 for kids and we needed 20 for people who are using the park. And so it was a legal reason why, and we listened to that. And we really did rely on the neighborhood to kind of guide us what was their priority here. And long term, with Finch Elementary there, it's just, the school thing is just priority. So we'll go with that, and we support the pilot for sure. I think many neighborhoods in our district support the 20-mile-an-hour pilot. And I think Councilmember Stratton, Corbin's perfect.
Yeah, and Corbin is working on it right now to see if we can make that request, and if it fits the categories that they can move into that and take the designation from Audubon. And Audubon also has west, if you're heading west on Northwest Boulevard, so you go past Audubon, you have the school traffic radar, and then ahead you have, over by the 2 restaurants, you have the permanent speed feedback sign. So we're trying to keep it safe on Northwest, and the neighborhood's been very, very involved in that. They've been very concerned about speeds on Northwest Boulevard with the school and the park. So they were good about really picking what their priority was going to be.
I might also mention something when you're done.
No, go ahead.
Well, for those of you who don't know, Corbin Park used to be a racetrack. That's why it was built in an oval, and that's why those beautiful homes are there. They used to watch horses race out front. So it's just perfect to go fast, and it really needs some calming.
The neighbors would love to see some calming in that area. Councilman Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, you know, some of the folks that have been in here, 20 miles an hour, that's horrible. The difference between 20 miles an hour and 30 miles an hour is 3 seconds per block. 3 seconds per block. So let that sink in for a minute. And it's not going to be a huge chunk of your day going 20 miles an hour. So when people say, oh, we're slowing down, we're going to increase, cut through traffic in the neighborhood, I'm going to push back on that and say, sorry, no. 3 seconds per block. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
I was just going to say I concur with Councilmember Kinnear.
Okay. Good job, all. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Betsy for public spaces and Wi-Fi connectivity. And Betsy, before I do this, I just want to let you all know that I need to leave. If this goes past noon, I need to leave the meeting, and I'm going to have Betsy take over if we're still meeting noon and after. Is that okay, Betsy?
Absolutely, and don't be afraid, I won't eat anybody. So, Eric.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you and Eric.
Thank you. I think we had been in discussions around our partnership with the school district and with distance learning, and we were looking at creative ideas and ways that we could support them through our parks. So we started looking at increased Wi-Fi connectivity throughout all our parks. So Eric was gracious to do a little homework for us, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric, to share what we found out.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember, and thank you all for at least allowing the time for an update here. I think we've got some exciting things that have happened over this past year that we can leverage. Obviously, no one had had knowledge of the COVID situation, and obviously our impact to the schools was going to occur. But last year, which kind of culminated a couple years worth of effort between the library, parks, and kind of technology and support. We basically, set up the Riverfront Park for Wi-Fi access that is largely being, shepherded and assisted by the library using their open platform. And the technology group really was just kind of a partner in helping make sure that the pipes and the bandwidth and the other capabilities were in place. And part of that included the fact that we are delivering now a bandwidth into the region. Which gives us some capabilities kind of to it, I guess, if you will say, like at a wholesale level, which means that we could actually apportion off a certain amount of bandwidth for this parks project, this pilot project individually. So it's not, part of the same city network. It's not part of the same, city bandwidth that we use, especially that's supporting now our virtual remote work that is happening. The library has been the primary, I think, leader and steward of that service. And earlier conversations over this past year, and I certainly will always defer to Andrew and to Garrett to jump in, have talked about as we go through the construction process for the libraries, and we have basically libraries and parks, sharing a nexus, whether that be Shade or Liberty, et cetera. That we would look at extending that same model if we saw the performance, out of the Riverfront Park example, and library has been doing a good job in terms of kind of tracking the use, which I think as you would expect, during the weekday is goes down, but it spikes on the weekend. It really matches, I think, the curve of what you see in the park in terms of attendance. Where that is, I think, largely taken a step down, as we've gone through the COVID thing over the past, 4 or 5 months, it still, I think, is measurable. That people basically use this Wi-Fi, when they're at the park or they're in proximity to the park or they're coming to the park to use the Wi-Fi. I don't think that's their primary use. I think Garrett has and his team have a lot of other attractions to get people into the parks in terms of the open spaces. But we're certainly seeing there is that access to Wi-Fi is growing. And this really matches, I think, what library has been educating all of us on over the past couple of years, which is that they basically have been tracking for a good number of years the fact that people will drive to the parking lot of a library even if the library is not open, just to access Wi-Fi during their open hours. And so I think what we have to do, and this is something that Andrew and Tara, the technology manager for the library, have been actively looking at how do we use this as a leverage point, and I will, after I finish my piece, I'll certainly invite Andrew to add any commentary, that he might know in better detail than I have. But we certainly see that there's a need and a benefit to leverage the capabilities we have. And as we basically make sure that we have the conduit and the fiber connectivity between our libraries and parks and downtown and District 81 for that matter, then that opens up the capability to leverage this special or separate bandwidth that we have accessible to be able to use for other public uses or needs. And the library has already been in that business, for decades in terms of delivering, that accessibility to the internet. So I think there's some great ways to continue that partnership, and leverage all the assets and tools we have. And I look forward to being part of that conversation. And Andrew, if there's anything else you'd like to emphasize, I'm happy to defer to you or Garrett for that.
I think you covered it really well. It is something that we've been exploring. I think that the Riverfront Park is a great example of how parks and libraries can work together and get this access out to the public. My one concern as we're talking about this is it doesn't fix the problem around the digital divide. It would be sort of a Band-Aid approach. We do have inclement weather in Spokane where it's not an equal access or an equitable access for the community, but we're more than happy to explore and stand up and get the community the access that they need during the pandemic and afterwards.
And that's a good point, Andrew. And I think the other main thrust that we're working on, and this is something that the council president was instrumental in getting started. Again, going back a couple of years, as we have now increased capability within the region. Not only is the city of Spokane, doing it for some of our regional and internal use, but we have, I think large companies now coming in and making major investments. For the first time in a long time, new franchise agreement level, where they're going to penetrate the city basically at the kind of the 70 and 80% level. And we're currently working with those organizations and making sure that we're opening up our conduit and fiber capability again, and we have to follow some requirements, based on federal and state law as it relates to privacy and security of our information in our government systems. But we have the capability to leverage conduit and other shared spaces to help these new companies coming in get the penetration they need in a much quicker and cost-effective manner. And honestly, it actually opens up less roads, in terms of, the construction effort that's required for new fiber. So these are kind of exciting. And what I would suggest, and one of the things that both library and I have discussed in the past is how can we leverage some of these projects. Andrew's team did a really good job looking at the digital divide and where they're seeing, areas of equity. And I think these would be the conversations we should take back to our vendor partners to see how we can basically leverage those segments going in and how we might be able to incentivize, their use, for our I guess, impacted populations, especially with the school remote learning environment. In a much greater way than we've ever done before. So I think that's kind of an exciting process, and we can certainly keep you posted as we have those conversations. And it would be probably beneficial to have one or more of you at those conversations to help influence.
And Eric, I would just add what example of that momentum moving forward, I think is Liberty Park is a prime example. So much investment over the years with Aquatic Center, now the partnership with libraries, Trail Network. This next month with the park board, because of this partnership with the library that we have, we want to have Liberty Park be the first smart park in the city. So we're going to be moving forward an MOU to the park board that'll have our partners like Avista, Itron, the city, Urbanova, to look at how can we connect people better, how can we communicate better, how can then we give them opportunities like wireless networks and sensors and updated lighting and those from a security standpoint. So Liberty Park will be that first location within the city, but that's because one, we have an active community neighborhood. We have a lot of investment, and it's just a good fit moving forward. So we'll hopefully be seeing that evolve over the fall as well of all our partners, and Liberty Park will be a great case study for us.
Yeah, so I think a lot of things happening, and we certainly, I think, put a better I guess, kind of framework around this, just so there's ongoing visibility, and that's certainly something I can work with the other departments on to make sure is more visible for kind of reporting and status as we go forward. So that's kind of all I have, pending any other input or questions.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
Yes, I was just going to say this kind of started for me as a conversation around the Great Divide and equity around access, and we started brainstorming, Garrett and I, how cool would it be the park to be your classroom when weather allows that, and how that could help with some of the equity. So it was exciting to hear that some of this work had already been started, but to have it around the city, and as you can hear the excitement amongst all of us people, I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great partnership between the parks, the city, and our school district. We could do it together, and Liberty Park just gets me over the top to be the first smart park in the city. So thank you, Eric, for bringing that information to us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Anybody else, questions or comments? That is an amazing idea and smart park. I love it. So whatever you need from council members, let us know, and our neighborhoods will be thrilled for that information. So that's perfect. Thank you both for participating. Andrew, you want to continue on with Library Bond?
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Can we all see it? All right. So just here to give an update on the 2018 voter-approved bond projects from the library. It's been a while. I think the last time we chatted was April or May. The good news is we are still on budget. We are still relatively on time. The pandemic has delayed us maybe a month or so with our projects, but considering the impact of the pandemic on everywhere else, we feel like we are in really good position moving forward. Just some pictures to share, really. The Shadle Library, mostly the interior, exterior work getting done, a lot of demolition in the Shadle project. We are hoping to complete this project by June of next year. So it's going to quickly move forward as we're advancing these projects. Liberty Park that we had just talked about, we're looking to finish this one by mid to late June of next year as well. Lots of groundwork being done, concrete being laid. If you haven't been out there, it's fun to watch, and you can do it safely and social distanced if you're into watching construction. But we're very pleased to see this project still be on time. Leon and Keeble is handling this project for construction for us. We had put it out to bid last April, and they were the winning bidder. Same with our Hive project that's on Sprague. It looks like I do not. Oh, there we go. There is a picture there for the Hive. That one it's about 2 weeks staggered from Liberty Park, so very much the same thing. This is one of our partnership sites with the school. It's going to serve as a training and learning area for Spokane Public School students, as well as art studio spaces for the public, which will be run by Spokane Public Library. Hilliard, this construction project being run by the school district. Also on time, we're set to open up, considering with pandemic, next year as well. That would be in time for the school year starting next year. But we'll see how this pandemic thing unfolds. Downtown, if you've been downtown, you'll see a lot of exterior things happening. Lots of materials being removed and demoed from the building. A freight construction elevator being built on the outside. Been working closely, Walker Construction as well as Garco. Garco's handling the streets work being done on Lincoln, so we're having those two firms work really closely and coordinating together, and it seems to be working out really well. The downtown library isn't set to be complete until March of 2022. It's a big project, but one that we feel will be well worth it for the community when it is completed. Another thing that I wanted to talk with council about and ask for help on is helping us find a place for our 24/7 library kiosks. You'll recall a couple years ago, we launched our first one at the West Central Community Center. And as part of our bond projects, the council asked that we include a few more as part of our program budget. So we are now ready to look at locations for the kiosks. And we want your help and we want the public's help. So we've developed an application process for ideas to come in to the library. As you know, running these community input sessions can be problematic during the pandemic. So we're trying to be creative in how we can get the word out and get the input that we need from the public. So basically, what these dispensers do is they offer convenience for picking up library materials. They can enhance a location because you're adding an experience to a location, like we're doing at the West Central Community Center. And it provides just another option for that traditional library borrowing activity. So we do have some criteria developed for placement. It needs to be free for the library. It needs to be co-located with another community amenity. Think community center or park or a store, business location. We're not opposed to that. We want it to be an active area because that benefits both us as well as the amenity that we'd be partnering with. It needs to be inside city limits. Parking will be a consideration. And we'd really like this to be on a primary or secondary arterial. And it also needs to have internet and power so it can communicate with the rest of the library backbone. So what we've done is we've identified some opportunity areas. As you're looking at the map, what we've put out here is that the blue circles are where 50% of where our customers currently reside for that location. The green circle is where 75% of the customers reside for a given location. And what we're trying to do here is show you the coverage of our different facilities. We've included the new projects like Liberty Park, the Hive, West Central's in there in between the Shadle and downtown. And we've also shown the county libraries and how they tend to serve the public as well. So you've got North Spokane Library and Moran Prairie on the north and south of this. So we've identified some possible areas. This isn't set in stone that these are the areas that we would choose. It just makes sense for how our service model is looking. But if it's a fantastic idea, it's definitely going to be under consideration for us. So for District 1, we're targeting the Shiloh Hills area. For District 2, we're looking at the Grandview Thorpe or Leta Hangman Creek. We're open to either. And for District 3, we are looking at the Northwest neighborhood to place these. They hold about, I want to say about 600 items. And any of those items can be holds. We're actually looking at a different model than what we've chosen for West Central Community Center. They've evolved a little bit since then, and we're able to see how the usage actually happens with a machine like that. So we've adapted and chosen a different vendor for these machines. you're a little limited on the holds of the current machine, and you have just greater flexibility with the machines that we're looking at right now. So we're hoping that you can help us get the word out, maybe help us be a little strategic with how we're looking at these locations, potential locations, as we're moving forward with these bond projects. This is kind of our right now we're in phase 1 of implementation of our construction with these 5 bond projects that we currently have going. This is kind of a 1.5 as we're identifying these locations, and then we'll jump into phase 2 with the redo of South Hill and Indian Trail. That planning will happen in earnest October of this year, and we'll start the construction of those when Liberty Park and Shadle open. There will be a brief period where they're all open, but once those are up and running, we'll shut down South Hill and Indian Trail and start construction. That's all I have. I'd like to open it up for questions. Comments.
Oh, Councilmember Mom, go ahead.
I'm so excited for this. Having that 24/7 access is really what people want. Councilmember Stratton and I have gone to many community events around what's happened and at the West Central Community Center, and I'm glad to see that the product is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it potentially could be more accessible to children because a lot of the products were out of the children's view.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that we continue to give feedback to the vendors about that we need to have ADA accessibility and for children to be able to see the products, to access them. I did have one question on the geography map, and I thought it might be interesting while you were talking. I looked at the density, population density, which I think is important when we're making these decisions, not just on geography, because those of you familiar with the northwest side of town, much of that is up against the river. There's a lot of open space. We've got Joe Albee over there. So maybe geographically it looks like, oh, we need that coverage over there. I think we need to look at where the people are. So that might be just another added layer there. The other question I had, and I'm super excited about this model because I think this is something we could do to have full coverage in the city in the future, and maybe be an anchor for a potential, physical library based on the data. I'm just curious how we as the city are able to count a county library as our level of service.
So we don't necessarily, it's just more for context of where people are probably going for their usage. We actually find that a lot of dual usage, especially in the south, between South Hill and Moran Prairie, where they'll just go to whichever has the item that they need. But no, we don't look at as part of our service. We look at them as more of a partner in serving the community. Does that answer?
Yeah, and I think it's important when we're showing this map because that's really not our library. I mean,
no, it's not.
And so, or both of them. And I just really want to call out District 1 because why we don't have a library up there for all the thousands of people. I'm so excited to not only start the discussion about this kiosk, but something else more permanent. I know we've got a new facility going in up there now, but it's very exciting. And I guess my last comment is, the sizes of the bubbles, is that based on the physical size of the building, or how are you determining the spread on the map?
So that's based on the actual usage, or I think some population density is in consideration there as well. So it's kind of a formula that my deputy is using to illustrate what the reach of each of those facilities really is as far as the population goes.
So current use. This is actually a current use map?
Pre-COVID.
Okay.
So we would look much different if we were talking about right now. We're doing about 16 to 20% of our normal business through curbside pickup, which really drives home the point that people like to browse. The collection. That's where a lot of our usage really comes from. But yeah, this would be, I think, 6 months to a year prior to COVID closures.
Okay. Well, I think that's important, and it may be good when we're looking at this analysis to understand that's more on how people use it now. And when you look at the distance between some of these, that's a long distance between Indian Trail or Shadle or Hilliard and even North County. So I think it would be great to kind of look at it from where the people are, and then, you know, where a physical facility could shorten their trip is kind of what I'm coming up with, kind of a geographical trip that might be important. Certainly out in District 2, that area is so isolated, it makes total sense. So I just support this. That's why I had those questions about the map, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments for Andrew? No? Andrew, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And thanks for all you're doing and trying to make everything work during COVID. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Jason Ruffing. Is Jason here?
I am here. Good morning.
Jason, good to see your face.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
Okay, go ahead with your Community Champions foreclosure registry.
Yes. So this is another one-year extension of our existing contract with ProChamps or Community Champions. It is a consultant agreement. We have a foreclosure registry for residential properties that have been issued a notice of default by lending organizations. This contract has been in place since 2016, and it is actually the final extension. This extension will be the final extension. So during this next year, we'll be brainstorming internally of what the future of this contract or the future of a registry of some sort of properties should look like for the city of Spokane. So we'll have some updates and some other communications throughout the next year, but the intent of this briefing is just for the upcoming extension. The current contract expires on September 30th, so it will, sometime in the month of September, I'll be before you to present it again. Just wanted to give some background and be available to answer any questions about the registry, code enforcement in general, the city of Spokane right now. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
And this is the registry that people can get access to if they want to look at the list of foreclosures to purchase, or is this is that the same thing?
Yeah, so we do receive some public records requests for the current foreclosure registry list. We don't provide much info other than a list of addresses when we do get those requests. It's not a public-facing database. It's just an internal database for really the general intent of the registry is to enable code enforcement staff to contact bank representatives. That's been a big problem for enforcement staff in the past. Is you go to a place, it's maybe an abandoned property, there's 2 or 3 different banks that have a lien and a bunch of different management companies, and we don't have any clue of who those people are. So the registry provides us contact information for the bank, for the property preservation company. It lets us provide notice of conditions, and it helps us try to mitigate those adverse impacts. And at least in 2016, when this contract started and this relationship started with ProChamps, we had a very serious problem with abandoned properties, and specifically ones that are in what's called pre-foreclosure, which was like they were stuck, where at least then the common reaction that a homeowner would have was they would leave the property when they received that notice of default. And so we would have a property stuck in foreclosure with nobody to caretake it. We had some difficult court decisions that said basically banks won't take care of the properties. And so it forced the city into a caretaker role of sorts. And so that's some of the context behind this was it was basically a registry to help us notify correct parties so that when we did take action on properties, we had all of our boxes checked and all of our notification in place.
So this is not the list that I can get if I'm somebody that wants to buy some foreclosed properties and clean them up and flip them or develop them for housing. That's not, this is separate, right?
Yeah, and as I said, this can be requested through a public records request. I think you're referring to something called the building official active list, which is the list of our properties in the building official process.
That's it.
Yeah. So there is some overlap between those properties and properties that are on the registry because a lot of those are in foreclosure too. But still, if somebody obtains that list and they want to try and purchase a property and flip it, it's still a civil private transaction. These aren't properties that the city owns, so I can't facilitate any sort of sale. They would have to contact the bank and do all the legwork that they would normally have to do.
Okay, perfect. Councilmember Wilkerson.
Thank you, Councilmember Stratton. Those were the questions I had because, like you, community members have asked about these ghost homes or properties, and there is no real direct avenue and how to get that information.
Yes. Yeah, so I would say the building official active list is the most accurate. We've also worked and talked with you in the past about Ptolemy building blocks, which is another tool that we use to run better reports of what we would consider actual abandoned property list of some sort. But that's another database that's internal only at this point. If this registry changes whenever we go out to RFP over the next year and try and think of a better use of our monitoring time, if foreclosures aren't the best use, and we come up with a better use, we would then have that list, whether it's an abandoned property registry, vacant property registry, there are all sorts of different criteria we could set as a community of which types of properties have to register. And then whatever the registry is, that would then be a requestable document of those properties.
Anybody else have comments, questions? Nope. Jason, thank you. We look forward to more information on this, and hopefully we'll see your face again soon.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Earl last to talk about the zoning overlay at North Foothills. And Betsy, again, if I have to leave the meeting, I'll have you close it up. Thanks.
Well, I hope I can get you out of here by noon. I think I can. I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you're seeing my screen. This is an overlay that is in the North Foothills area, what we call the Employment Center. It's generally located around Hamilton in North Foothills. City Council resolution in May directed staff to conduct this process. It's an abbreviated planning process, and I have a slide that shows kind of what the process that we went through, but you'll remember that in May. This is the area. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer or not, but this is the area where Hamilton, for most people, the driving experience is Hamilton becomes Nevada. And then North Foothills goes by a city water department, and there are two signalized intersections, one at Nevada and Hamilton and one at Perry and North Foothills. So kind of between those two areas. The yellow hash mark shows the areas that the overlay is under consideration to add. And there are two projects in this general vicinity that were really what was the impetus behind the council resolution in May. So Gonzaga Haven and also District 81 is citing a middle school in this area. Both of these projects realize they have multiple zoning categories for the parcels that they have aggregated, and having this zoning overlay will produce a better site design and assist those projects. I did want to mention when I'm showing this slide that we're also capturing Fire District 2 and the lower play fields at GPREP. Neither of these have any projects planned or associated with this, but when we're doing a zoning overlay, these are also properties you will see that are in a light industrial zoning category, and so it made sense to include them as well. So the really quick process we went through in May, there was the resolution directing staff to conduct this abbreviated planning process. We were able to conduct agency notice in June, so agencies and interested city departments had the opportunity to review and comment this proposal. And then in July, we did a combined notice of Plan Commission hearing, the application, and the SEPA determination to we do mailed notice to property owners, taxpayers, and occupants within 400 feet of the proposals. Signs were put on the properties, and the Plan Commission also held a workshop. And also, we had our first virtual open house for this specific project, so that information was also mailed to people. And I actually had 8 people in attendance, which may not sound awesome, but it was a good opportunity to outreach in this time. August, last week, Plan Commission had the hearing. They have recommended this unanimously, 9-0, for council consideration, and the council is going to hear this item next week, which is the 24th. This is the same area in yellow before, is now in red hashed, but you can see the light industrial zoning, which is the base zoning. It's a little hard to see the streets on this one, but the CC1 hugs along Hamilton here, and the North Foothills area, all the south area is already predominantly in the CC1 EC, which stands for Centers and Corridors Type 1 Employment Center. So this area on the land use plan map is predominantly already designated as a center, so an area of focused growth, and an employment center, which is typically adopted around areas that have kind of this light industrial heritage. But along Perry, this overlay would be added, and that would allow the District 81 site to predominantly be CC1 EC. And then in this area to the north of the fire station, you can see that area also is light industrial, so that will assist the Gonzaga Haven site development. So just some of the particulars, it's 10.8 acres, 11 parcels in total, but one. Gonzaga Prep is in one giant parcel, so just a portion of that. It's light industrial now. It will continue to be light industrial. This overlay just adds the option of joining the CC1 zoning, and it is in the Logan neighborhood. So the CC1 the CC3 overlay is described in the city's code. And you can opt into that if you have, so you retain your base zoning and also take on this overlay. So this allows also residential development to occur, which we do not allow in the light industrial. We do allow that in most every other zoning category, but not light industrial. When an applicant does opt into the CC1 zoning uses that are allowed, they also opt into accepting the design and the landscape standards, which are much higher in the CC1 and the CC2. And I already mentioned a couple times that they're continuing to have the same zoning category as they have now. And I wanted to mention too that this is not a comprehensive plan amendment, so not only are we not changing the zoning, but we're not changing the land use plan map. I mentioned a bit the outreach, so here it is again, so you can see what outreach we have done so far. And as I mentioned earlier, the Plan Commission has recommended unanimously that this be approved. And I've already done email notice also to any interested persons that next Monday you will be hearing this item as well. And I really like your meeting procedures page, so I've been sending that out as well to help people that in case you have testimony. So those are my high-level comments. I hope that's given you some idea. I'm happy to answer questions, and Jonathan Malahan from Catholic Charities and also Greg Forsyth wanted to be available to you as well if you had an interest in any specific project information. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Does anybody have comments, questions? Councilmember Mom, do you have? You're on mute. Okay, I don't think she had anything.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen then.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilmember Cathcart or Burr?
Yep. Council President here.
Council President.
I just wanted to note that folks are going to see a lot of matters related to this project. They've got some hard dates in the fall in terms of funding, and so there's some this project and some street vacations. So people will see that kind of on an expedited basis. That's the reason, though, is so that they can get everything finalized in order to sign legal documents later this fall. So just wanted to give people a heads up about that in general.
Thank you. So with that, if nobody has any further questions, concerns, comments for the meeting, we're going to go ahead and be done and see everybody at 1:15. But Council President wants to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to give people a heads up. The administration's requested an executive session after briefing today. Briefing's going to go a little longer because we're going to brief both tonight's meeting and next week's meeting because we were off last week. So be prepared for an executive session. Thanks.
All righty then. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.